Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 16 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. Before we get started with the interview with David Walder from the Newcastle Falcons, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who's tuned in so far. It's been pretty awesome, the feedback that I've gotten so far, both from friends in the rugby community here in North America, but also from complete strangers who have just emailed me through the website or got in contact with me through Twitter or something like that. It's been really nice, really humbling, and I'd just like to thank everyone who's been listening in, and I hope you're enjoying the show because I'm really enjoying doing it. Yeah, and if you do have any kind of feedback of any kind, it'd be great to hear from you. Any feedback is useful for the show. If it's going to make the experience better for listeners out there, I'm really keen to hear about it. And the best way to do that is to go through the website. The website is www.therugbycoachescorner.com. Coaches is spelled Coachs. There's no apostrophe. In that website, we've got a contact tab. You can type in your details and then send me a quick message. And also, while you're there, you can also look at the website in general. It's got on the homepage, it's got all our episodes there. But there's also a couple of tabs that may interest listeners. One's for recommended resources. So in there, we've got all the books and links to websites and things like that guests will mention in the show. There's also a videos tab there as well for any kind of stuff that I dig up on YouTube that's relevant to some of the episodes. And then there's also another tab called Other Podcasts, and there's some great podcasts out there that are most of them aren't rugby related, but they're definitely applicable. So have a look at that and check it out. And then lastly, I'd if you're able to and if you're keen, any reviews that the show gets on iTunes is extremely helpful because it promotes the program when people search for different podcasts. The more reviews you get, the better you come up in searches. So we're definitely keen to spread the message far and wide about the Coach's Corner. And yeah, so if you have the time, if you could jump on iTunes and do an honest rating of the show, and again, that feedback's really helpful. So yeah, thanks very much again for everyone for listening and for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy episode number 16. All right, cheers. Bye for now.
Dear Ron McLean, Dick Coach's Corner.
You're listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plymer,
For someone to explain
bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby,
the distinction between these mandatory
sharing ideas to make the game better.
All right, thanks for joining us for episode number 16 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. Joining me today is David Walder. He's the current attack coach for the Newcastle Falcons in the Aviva Premiership. David played 15 years professionally in England and Japan with clubs such as the Newcastle Falcons, London Wasps, and the Mitsubishi Dynaboars, including 4 full caps for England. He scored over 1,000 points in the English Premiership and is a Heineken Cup, Guinness Premiership, Powergen Cup, and Tetley Bitter Cup winner. After retiring in February 2013 due to a knee injury, he coached kicking at the Newcastle Falcons as well as roles with Percy Park RFC, Durham University and RGS before being offered the team attack and backs coaching role at the Newcastle Falcons in 2014. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show, David. So welcome.
Thanks, Andy. Great to be here.
Yeah. So pretty long and distinguished playing career. What are your main highlights in that 15 years of playing professionally?
I think the first thing was just to be able to get through 15 years of it. I think there were ups and downs, and I think the way the modern game's going, I think when I started out, it was I was lucky enough in 2001 to actually play against Jonah Lomu at Twickenham, and I remember thinking at the time, we were told gang up on him, jump all over him, and just really target him because he was the only big bloke in the opposition, in inverted commas. And I think by the time I retired, I think I was the only little bloke in the team. I think the game's moved on, and so to get through 15 years of it, spent most of my time running away from the big people. Yeah. That was in itself, I think, was a bit of an achievement. But obviously, the things that stand out with playing for England and a chance to represent my country, and then the trophies that you win are just sort of a nice little byproducts along the way. I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah, that's great. So now you're fully into the coaching role. Who were some of the coaches in your playing and coaching history that have influenced you the most?
I think the first guys that I really were in touch with is a guy called Terry Cobner when I was at school. He was a Welsh flanker in the 1970s, and he was my tutor at school, and he was my rugby coach from my senior school, and that was probably the first time that you had. I can remember having active coaching. You know, before that it was all about having fun, and which it still should be and still is a lot of the time. But he was the first guy I can remember as a proper guy I started to learn off. I went to university with a guy called Ted Wood, who's a legend of Durham University. He's been there for years. He's still around now. He's a fantastic man. I call him quite often, and he got me through my university. I think he did half of my dissertation for me, to be honest. But that's probably why I think a bit favourably of him. Yeah, but they're probably the two leading up to the professional world, and then in the professional world, I think I've probably learned a bit of everyone I've been coached off for various, some good, some bad, some out there ideas. And I think it's really important to be open-minded. And I've come across some really interesting characters and some really interesting coaches. And, the guys like Steve Bates, who I think at Newcastle, when I was one of my first coaches there, was possibly a little bit ahead of his time in his ideas and forward thinking, and possibly people struggled to cope with the way he came in it, but actually a lot of things that were then or since he finished in the professional world are being taken on as the norm now. So he was probably the one guy that sticks out to me for being really forward thinking. To then guys like at Wasps, Sean Edwards, who is probably the most, in inverted commas, famous coach that I've been coached with. Yeah, I had a great relationship with Sean. He was a very extreme coach, very thought about the game a lot, spoke pretty harshly at times to you, but you always knew where you stood with him, and I had a good working relationship with him. But I think across the board, everybody that I've had contact with as a player who coached me, I think I've always been able to take something good or bad from the way they've treated me or their drills or the way they approach things.
Okay, yeah, great. And what about now? Where do you go to for your current professional development to keep fresh and get new ideas and those kind of things?
Yeah, I think my take on it was I've got a good director of rugby, Dean Richards, and I sat down with Dean a few months ago, and he said, what about continued professional development? And I said, rather than go on courses, I think watching people in action across a spectrum of sports is what's important, both at elite level and amateur level. Last summer I spent a week with the Chicago Bears and the NFL looking at how they do stuff. Right. So with Northwestern University, they were very, very welcoming to us. So spent sort of 2 or 3 days with them, just seeing their systems and how players are spoken to and how managers work and the allocation of time and the intensity of different days of training things, through to try and spend time looking at football clubs and how they work. And obviously footballers in the UK, soccer players, you probably know them, we're quite high profile, how you deal with egos and things. And then there's other guys who I've come across, Richard Cheatham, who I know you've spoken to and done a brilliant podcast on creativity and coaching. I try and speak to people like that and get their sort of perspective on things, and just try and be open-minded to things and getting as much input from as many different angles as possible. Yeah,
that's great. The Chicago trip would have been awesome. I was there for the Australia-US game before the World Cup, and it's a pretty awesome city, and to go there for some PD work would have been pretty special.
No, it was brilliant. Again, big thank you to Coach John Fox and his team. They were really welcoming to us, and they made us. We had access to all areas, which was great. Sitting pitch side, talking to the coaches about what they're trying to get out of certain things, and it was eye opening, because on the one hand we see a lot of NFL on television, and then obviously there's a lot of money in the game, and you assume that because there's money, they're going to be at a certain level. But then when I actually scratched beneath it, and we spoke to the nutritionist and stuff, she was saying that she's still struggling to persuade guys that eating pizza 3 times a day isn't good for their body. And you think, well, actually, all the money and all that, but actually it's about educating players, and that was their biggest, I think.
It doesn't stop, eh?
No, exactly. Exactly.
Right. All right. So if someone was to come and watch a session coached by you, what's some of the things they're going to see and hear?
I like to think I'm a fairly positive coach. Yeah. I'm constantly rewarding things for good things that people do. Fully aware that when I was a player, that the lift you got in training when someone just even says, "Well done, Dave," when I was doing things, and so I'm constantly trying to improve players through that. I stop things quite a lot, possibly too much, to get feedback from the players.
Yeah.
I like to get their input on what they're seeing and what they're hearing and what they're feeling, and how I can tweak things within the drill to make things better, within the game to change a rule to get more out of it.
Yeah.
I'd say fairly upbeat. I do probably talk a little bit too much, and I think that's probably just because I love what I do and I'm very enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, great. And so, if it would you have a bunch of cones laid out, or would it be like hit shields or no hit shields, or it depends on the session, obviously? But
yeah, I'm fairly loose with my gear. You know, I sort of, as you say, it depends on the session, but I'd say I'm quite relaxed about what I'm trying to get out of things. The way the game is at the moment, it's about trying to upskill people across all areas.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that I work in a world where I've got a specified area to focus on, and that being attack. So I don't have to worry about the contact side of it because we've got a guy that coaches the breakdown. I don't have to worry about the defensive side of it. Everything's intertwined, and it's important that you do cross everything across all areas. But I'm lucky that I can just look at the attack side of things. So I wouldn't say I'm not a massive believer in having a lot of cones. You know, if you come to watch us, for example, on game day, our warm up, I'd say we driven by a couple of the coaches, feel that warm-ups are a very, very individual thing prior to a game.
Yeah.
So players need as much time as they can to do whatever they need to do to get themselves ready. There has to be a team element, but I think we as a club have a fairly short team element where the guys will do a little bit of handling and decision-making to get them going for a couple of minutes. They'll then go into a little bit of contact work, which one of the other coaches run. From that, we'll split. The forwards are going to do their line-outs and get their bits and pieces. As backs, we'll just try to work a bit more on the decision-making side of it and the handling side of it, getting the ball through your hands. And then we come together, we do 2 minutes of team attack shape and 2 minutes of team defence, and then we're into the game. So it's you know, I guess that's fairly representative of my thoughts on it, that, you know, you can have 1,000,001 cones, but you don't actually need them. You know, the game's more about just having a feel for things and players taking ownership of what they need to get themselves ready for or what they're trying to work on.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's a trend that we're starting to see more of in rugby for sure. As the attack coach, are you also the backs coach?
Yeah. So I look after the backs as well.
Yeah. So how do you, like, when we're talking about just the backs only? How do you split up the time made available to you from the head coach to account for all things that they need to be proficient at?
Yeah, so we normally, my view is that most of the set piece stuff relies on what the forwards do. Mm-hmm. So I try and cover all of my set piece work with the team, or certainly with the back row. Yeah. From a scrum point of view, we try and play with a 7 and an 8. So we launch off that. With the line out stuff, I think it's all of our line out stuff is done off a line out. So therefore, which allows me, we normally have at least one, but normally 2 unit sessions of the week. The first one is normally roughly half an hour, 40 minutes, of which, speaking to the defence coach, try and cover off things so we don't double up, so we won't do necessarily attack and defence, but if we can get away with it. But at the same time, if I want to prep our guys for playing against a certain defensive system, we have to ask the defence to behave like that team rather than on our defence. So we try and split it so that there will be a time when it's just our attack against our defence, so we're not doubling up on things. But there'll also be a time where we're working on certain things which are looking at attacking a particular type of defence. In that, my first of the half an hour that I have at the start of the week, I guess I'd probably have 20 minutes would be on handling. Just whether it be running straight, whether it be working on depth, whether it be working on angle changes, whether it be working on timing, you know, with just almost a generic part of it. And then the 10 minutes will focus on putting that into practice against the type of defence you're going to face. So whether you need to be deeper, flatter, tighter, whatever that'll be. Yeah. Well, then the second unit session would normally tie in with the team session, and that'll be more set piece based. To be honest, the way the set pieces at the moment, a lot of teams just try and scrum for penalties, and it's pretty dull. We as a team, well, my philosophy is let's try and attack. You've got 8 people, you know where 8 people are going to be, and that the forwards are tied in. So you've got a good opportunity from looking at video of seeing how teams defend it. It's a really good chance to have a go at defence. So my attitude is let's get the ball in and out and play, and we try and attack like that from scrums. But that's, as I said, that second unit session is normally about 15 minutes, and that'll be we'll jog through our starter plays while the forwards are getting through the lineouts. Then we'll come together and run them full speed, 7-on-7 or 15-on-15 sort of thing.
Okay, and what about things like the specialist stuff like kicking? Are they expected to be doing that outside of regular training hours with your supervision or with the kick coach supervision?
No, we've got two skills coaches in place. All the players have their own skills programs. So I'm pretty lucky to work at the elite end of it, where we've got players have the time and we've got the coaches to be able to say to players. For example, the nines this morning, they met at 9 o'clock and they have 20 minutes of passing and kicking, which is specific to nines. The tens after the session, I kick balls back for 40 minutes for our 3 tens who are kicking at goal, kicking out of hand and kicking restarts.
Yeah.
I guess that's expected to be done in their own time. Occasionally we'll throw in a unit session where we'll look at a bit of kicking just to try and change it up. But as a general, our strategy, the way we play, we generally don't kick a lot off our centres. So again, the work that they're expected to do would be in their own time and down with the skills coach and either find a specific time to do it or sort of maybe review it every month and find out whether they're doing enough of it and they're progressing as we want them to.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so on to your role as an attack coach. Off air, we were talking a lot about you really enjoy the process of breaking down a team's defence. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think because the position I played fly half for 15 years. I played a little bit of fullback, but majority of my career was at fly half. Yeah. I used to love trying to pick defences apart and find weaknesses in it. And I saw it as a challenge every week for me to either find the plan myself or sit down with a coach and look at certain things and try and work how to unpick defences. Defences nowadays are so well organised and well practiced, but you can't cover everywhere on the pitch. And I think a bit of a philosophy, I think Pat Lamb, the coach at Connacht, I was speaking to him at the start of the season, and I really like what he said about his philosophy being whether you go over, you have to have the ability to go over, round or through every defence. And I like that sort of side of it, the way to come at it. And for me, defence is a bit boring because it's all about process. Most teams either go up and out or up and in, and that's pretty much it. Whereas attack, you've got so many variations, whether you play off 9, you play off 10, you play off the centres, you play with 1 runner, you play with 2 runners, you go same way, you zigzag. And I love all the different variations, and I see it as a real challenge to me to be able to give us the structure to be able to play whichever style and whichever way we want in order to break a defence down and score tries. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, I think I read an article just the other day where an interview with Mick Byrne, the former skills coach for the All Blacks, and he was saying that attack now is just so undercoached that you look at international games and people are still running across field and still, not being direct enough. Unfortunately, I've never been in that elite world, the top elite of international rugby. Hopefully, one day I'll get the opportunity to go there. But I get frustrated when you see where all the space is it's so attritional. And I don't think there's any secret that the best sides in the world probably play the most rugby. I know there's the stat out there that New Zealand kick the ball more than anyone, but when they choose to attack, they're so comfortable at moving the ball to the space, wherever that is, whether it's a kick, whether that's a pass, whether that's someone using their footwork. That's it's great to watch. And I think I'm pretty loose in my, I like structure. Northern Hemisphere people like structure, but the aim of having a structure in place is to give anybody the ability, if they see a mismatch in front of them, whether that's a forward on a back or a back on a forward or somewhat fast guy on a slow guy, to be able to go and take that person on and showcase what they've got. And I think that's got to be at the heart of everything you do, is giving guys the confidence and the license, for want of a better word, or the ability to actually recognise that mismatch, and then also the confidence to go and take it on. Yeah, and I think that concept of space is really important too. The French, not now because they're a bit more bash and crash now, but a decade ago, the French were amazing at that, just creating that space and then putting the player through there.
So natural, and it's a shame that it's almost probably been coached out of it and out of them. And I think when they're at their best, they're playing instinctive rugby, and I think that's something that for them they need to fix fairly quickly.
Yeah, I agree. they've gone to that trend of bigger is better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, well, what about the glorious climate you have in England? How does that influence your coaching decisions and your session design and those kind of ideas?
Again, from my playing days, I was very aware that you turn up at a ground and there'd be a howling gale and it'd be pouring with rain, and the only difference would be the coach would turn around and say, "Right, Dave's going to kick it more this week." And you sort of sat there and thought, it needs to be a little bit more than that, because I think it's a bit unfair. And if you've got an experienced fly half who's comfortable playing in all weather, you can just say that. But if you've got various levels of fly halves and various levels of kicking ability, you need to be a bit more descriptive to them, or help it, and help those guys with a bit more of a game plan. So you plan for the best, but you're also prepared for the worst. And I think last year we got away with it. I think we probably had one or two out of our 30-odd games where the weather was absolutely brutal. This year it seems to be we've had one or two games where the weather hasn't been brutal. And the wet, I don't think, should phase teams. It's more the wind. I think if you can play in the wet, you've got to practice. You can practice with wet balls, and you can challenge yourself, and I think you can still have that ambition to play. I just think that the wind is what really kills a team, and because I think people do get sucked into, if you've got the wind, just kick it, and if you're into the wind, just keep it. And I think you need a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so looking at team attack, then how do you design the attacking style that you want your team to play? Like, no doubt you profile your team first and then go off that, but there's got to be some changes week in, week out, depending on opposition.
Yeah, I think sort of we're set up the way we're. If you watch us, in theory, we're set up to be able to attack off 9 or off 10 or off 12 off most phases. The reality is you haven't always got those people in the right places, but I think we tend to spend a lot of time on our shape in the pre-season, getting us to a point, not looking at a defence, but just falling into shape so people aren't working too hard. There's a classic tendency in English rugby to overchase, and you'll end up with 5 people at a breakdown when in effect 2 would do. Most defences now operate with a tackler plus 1 defender. Occasionally a team will throw an extra defender in, and ironically at international level they'll normally throw two extra defenders in, so there should in theory be more space to attack, but that's different. So we spend a lot of time getting our shape right, and then each week we'll go into the game looking at a particular area of our shape that we think will be which will give us the most rewards in terms of creating the most mismatches. And so that might be those guys running off the 9 being used, the guys running off the 9 being a decoy, and then playing with the runners off the 10. It might be going out the back of both sets of runners or across the front of both, trying to get the ball out to the width. So my job is to make sure that we've got the ability to go wherever we want, and then actually just pick the right decision within that. And then in terms of looking at specific defences each week, I'll watch a couple of probably the last 5 games of an opposition. I'll skip through and try and look for specific weaknesses off set piece, or off counter-attack, or off turnover attack, or off scrum attack, and try and look at certain things that we've got in our playbook to exploit those weaknesses and either get you in behind the defence or give you the momentum to bend or eventually break the defence. So I think my previews will generally be set up. We're looking at a couple of specific areas to attack and how we're going to attack those off the set piece, with pictures of how a team will defend in phase play, and therefore how we're going to then attack them to try to break them down. And then the aim of training, you see, I think it's pretty simple. The difference between club, Premiership and international rugby is decision-making. So I'd say decision-making at international level, you'd expect your international fly half to make the right decision 18 times out of 20. Premiership level, probably 15 times out of 20, and club level, probably 10 times out of 20. The major difference being the number of options you've got to choose from and the speed at which you've got to make your decision. So again, club level, you've probably got 2 options, Premiership level, 3 options, and international 4 options, and you've got to pick that option in a split second quicker at each level you go up. Therefore, in training, my job is to try and put those guys in those situations where they're facing the pictures they're going to face at the weekend, so that they've seen the picture on a Saturday or a Sunday whenever we're playing. They've seen it, they're not fazed by it, and they know what cues they're looking for. A defender stepping in, hips turned in, somebody flying out the line. the scrum half joining the front line, leaving the space in behind. And my job is to try to show the pictures on a Monday or a Tuesday of what is likely to happen, and then go and train it during the week. So come Friday, we're all comfortable that we all know what we're looking for. So when it does happen, hopefully we can pick it off. Yeah. The caveat to that being the defences know, because they watch the same pictures of their own defence, so they'll see their same weaknesses. So they'll work on plugging those weaknesses because they know that as an attack, you're trying to exploit them. And that's why I love the game of almost double bluffing and going through things like that.
Yeah, it's got a chess-like feel to it. And I think that bit on pitches is really interesting. I think most of the science you read about how athletes learn and get better in motor skills and things like that. It's not instructional. It's pretty experiential, and they talk a lot about that in the literature about showing them pitches that their brain can recall on under pressure and go, yes, I've seen this before.
Yeah, I've never done it, but a guy, I can't remember who it was saying a good idea to try to help people as you decision makers as you get higher up is to actually show them footage, but show them at double speed.
Okay, great.
And then show them at normal speed, and then show them at half speed. And apparently, I haven't seen literature. The person who told me might well have seen literature. It was saying, hopefully, then when they see that picture on game day, they've seen it in their mind in slow motion, so they've got more time to pick it off. I've never tried it, but I like the thought of it.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, it'd be good to play around with that for sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, what about Northern Hemisphere rugby in general? You know, we're just coming off a pretty awesome Rugby World Cup for the Southern Hemisphere fans. Yeah. What do you feel needs to change or needs to develop or happen at a club level in your part of the world?
Yeah, I think it goes a little bit in circles or cycles. So I think the Northern Hemisphere possibly have missed a couple of cycles, but I think at international level, I think you're successful by sticking true to what your roots are. So for New Zealand to be playing a game that's relying on a natural ability because they're brought up on rugby from age 4 and 5. You know, Australia similarly, South Africa they're brought up and playing a very, very physical game. England are brought up on a set piece. Just the way the game has been for the last 30 years. And I think you need to not go away from that because that's what your DNA is and that's what you will always come back to. But you do definitely need to add to it and try and counter and develop your game in other areas so that you don't get left behind and focused, that if one area does get shut down completely, you haven't got another area to go to. And I think if you worry too much about being someone else, you lose sight of what you are. And I think that's something. So, you know, traditionally up here, Northern Hemisphere rugby is all about the set piece.
Yeah.
And I think at the moment it's gone too far about the set piece. You know, I think there's all the talk of the scrums, very pertinent to England playing Wales tomorrow with all coaches out in the press saying both sides are cheating. In all honesty, referees haven't got a clue and they're guessing. And the game is dire as a result at times. But the flip of that is I personally wouldn't want to see a game which is where the scrum lasts for a second, it's in and out and you're off you go and that's it. Because I think if you do that, you sort of take away from the beauty about rugby in my eyes is when you're a youngster choosing to play the game, there's a position for everybody. If you're tall, you're short, you're fat, you're skinny, you're quick. And the good thing about it is everybody is as important to everybody else. It's the ultimate team game. So without good props, you haven't got a good scrum. You can't get the ball. Without a good, without a second, there's so many things you can say, and everyone's so important to each other. And I think if you took the set piece away and devalued the set piece because it's hard to referee at the moment, I think you lose a big, big angle. Something needs to be sorted out because watching a game where 10 minutes of footage is taken up by a scrum isn't entertaining, and I completely see that. But as I say, I think you just need to be careful about which way they go with it.
Yeah, and I think from the other end too, you want to be careful of throwing the baby out with the bathwater because we've all seen teams when their scrum is not very strong, like the Wallabies have had their times with that, were the dark old days, and they might have the best outside backs or the best back line in general, but they're not getting the ball they need to perform.
Exactly. And I think you've got to get a balance. I think there will be a balance. I think there's a natural evolution of it, and everyone tries to aspire to be New Zealand, and that's great. But then if you take your eye off, what about Australia? I mean, no one saw them coming at the last World Cup, and some of the stuff they played was brilliant. Yeah. They sorted the scrum out and were absolutely brilliant to watch. So I think you've got to try and get the best of everyone, but ultimately also be really excel in what you're good at.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I England needs to have that attacking option, and I think they'll have it for sure with Eddie Jones. But it's not going to be. They're not going to be. That's all they're going to do. They're going to rely on their bread and butter as well.
Yeah, I think he's a really interesting appointment for them. I think he'll bring that Australian element of flair. The guys he's worked with, your Stephen Larkhams going back, your George Gregans and things like that. You know, he'll tie that in. At the same time, I think he's been quite clever that he's kept the core of guys who've been in and around and experienced and know what it's about. And I think in a couple of years' time, I think you'll see a very, very good England team playing an American term, an all-court game.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be really interesting. I just love the World Cup, but then the wash up afterwards and the 4 years leading to the next one, I also love that too. Just seeing how teams evolve and learn the lessons or don't learn the lessons.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think Japan are the case in point. And Jones obviously there, they stuck to what they were good at. They kept hold of the ball, they stayed away from set piece, and they played at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And teams couldn't live with them. They had success in South Africa. You know, I think that was the classic case of sticking and being very, very good at what you've been brought up doing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it was brilliant to watch.
All right. Final question then. What in your coaching journey so far? What are some of the biggest lessons you've learnt in your time coaching in your various roles?
What have I learned? I've learned to let people answer the question. Don't be afraid of silence.
Yeah.
I think quite often, because I'm quite an analytical person and I'm involved in the job, that I watch a lot of footage because I love it and I see things. When I come to present things, I'll ask a question. If I don't get the answer straight away, I'll jump in and give the answer.
Yeah.
And I think I've got to let things sit a bit and I say, don't be afraid of silence will be the key. I'm quite lucky. The year I spent coaching a women's team, Richmond Women, which was actually fascinating. They were a very successful team. They had, I think, 12 internationals at the time.
Great.
And I think on a Tuesday night they trained as a club, so they had 45 girls training, ranging from an international to a girl that had never played rugby before. And they all trained together, and they were adamant it had to be together, which was great. But then you've got the girl who's never played rugby stuck in the middle of a drill with an international girl running her, and you're on your feet and you've got to think, how can I get her out of there without making her feel that she's done anything wrong or bad, but still having her enjoy it enough to come back? And so you face those sort of challenges. I think that taught me quite a lot, from thinking on your feet. The world I'm in now, I'm lucky I've got plenty of time to prepare, because it's literally all I do every day is coach and prepare my sessions and look at footage and how I can get the best out of people. So I've got lots of time to do it. But I think, as I say, go back, long-winded answer to your question, the first thing I'd say is don't be afraid of silence.
Yeah. Let
people figure things out for themselves.
No, I agree. That's great advice. All right, we always end the show with the same 4 closing questions. When you were a kid growing up, who was the one player that stood out to you that got you into the game?
Jonathan Davies would be the one, I think, as the Welsh fly half.
Yeah.
He had a great sidestep. I remember a try he scored against Scotland. I can't remember what year it was, but he was probably the guy. I loved the way he played. I loved his style. And Welsh rugby was obviously, rugby in Wales is everything, and to see a guy really at the top controlling things was outstanding as well. He was just really, really interesting and enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, he spent some time in rugby league too, right? He played for Canterbury Bankstown. That was my team who I supported when I was growing up. I
remember scored a great try at Wembley against Australia, actually, where he in-outed the fullback and scored in the corner. Yeah,
I think he was the Welsh Wizard or something. His nickname was with Canterbury. He's great. He was fantastic. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, and what about current players now that you like watching running around?
The one who stands out, if I had to say one, would be Aaron Smith down in New Zealand. I just love the enthusiasm, the enjoyment he brings, but also his skill level and accuracy is unbelievable.
Unreal, isn't it?
He could pass the ball on a sixpence. That's bloody old school, that is. He could pass the ball and hit. His accuracy of pass, his accuracy of kick, his speed of pass. He's a threat. He's pretty much an all-round 9. Everyone talks about Dan Carter with the All Blacks and Kieran Reid and Severe's, and they're unbelievable players as well. But without Aaron Smith in the team, they were not the team that they were with him in the team. And he's brilliant. I love watching him play.
Yeah, he's easily the most complete scrum half going around for quite some time too.
Yeah, definitely. And he does it all with a smile on his face as well.
Yeah.
I think sometimes he hides behind his smile because he's got that competitiveness in him. Yeah. But it is great to see the enjoyment he plays with.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like watching him play, even though he's from the wrong side of the ditch. Yeah. All right. And what about coaches? Who are some of the? You mentioned a few. Steve Bates, Sean Edwards, those kind of coaches. Are they the ones that you look up to the most?
Yeah, I think I look back. As I said, I've been lucky enough to learn something off every coach that ever coached me as a player. I took something away from. But the two that stand out were Steve Bates because of his forward thinking and his lack of fear. He just tried things. He had us at one point practicing a cross kick to a pod being lifted.
That's great.
Everyone saying what's going on, and we never did it in a game. But I love the idea behind it, and I love the way he came at things. And as I said, a lot of what he used to talk about got poo-pooed, but it's stuff that I've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, which has been taken on by a lot of teams and top teams as well. So he'd stand out for that. And the other guy would be Sean Edwards. Competitive, wanted to win at everything he did. He'd treat I played with some brilliant internationals at Wasps, some guys who had 50, 100 caps, and he'd treat those guys the same as he'd treat the 18-year-old guy on trial. He didn't care. He gave enthusiasm. He gave everything to every session he gave, and you always felt that he was really trying to make you a better player, whatever stage of your career you're at. And I've got a lot of respect for him for that.
Yeah, that's great. It's a good message to coaches for sure. Yeah. Okay, and last question: who's a coach that maybe doesn't have the profile of those guys that you really admire?
The one guy I love coaching with at the moment is a guy called Mickey Ward up at Newcastle Falcons. He's the forwards coach this year. He's been doing the scrum work he's been involved with Newcastle Falcons for 20 years as a player. He's a tight head prop. He's a Geordie boy through and through from Newcastle, home boy. And I think everyone that meets him now as a coach is pleasantly surprised at the way he thinks about the game and his ideas. And I love him. He challenges me every day. He sits next to me. He's always asking me about backs things, asking about line-outs, challenging me why I'm doing things, always keeping me on my toes, always with a reason behind it. He does the forward stuff in Newcastle, and he then goes and he's director of rugby for Bladen and National 1, which is level 3 over here. So he's a busy man. Yeah. But he's an absolutely brilliant coach, and I say underrated. He's not underrated because he's rated really highly at Newcastle, but possibly someone that people outside of Newcastle don't know about, and would be amazed and surprised at his coaching ability, and someone that actually I really enjoy coaching alongside.
It's great. It's always good when you work with people like that, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm a bit disappointed we didn't talk about hair products with regards to the backs, but maybe another time. But
that could be next one, couldn't it?
Yeah, maybe a follow up. But apart from that, I've had a ball talking about this. This is an area of the game that I really love, and I've got a bunch of good ideas from you, and really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing it with everyone.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's always good to talk and always good to share these things. Love talking about it.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks very much, Dave, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers. All the best.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us on Twitter at RugbyCoachSCNR or via the website at therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.